Hello, everybody. Today we are going to read from the book of Jacob. And again, this is children's stories of the Bible. Isaac, the son of Abraham, married a woman named Rebekah, who gave birth to twin boys named Esau and Jacob. When the two boys grew up, Esau became like his father's favorite, because he loved the outdoors and was a skillful hunter like Isaac, and Jacob became his mother's favorite because he was a quiet boy and enjoyed being at home and doing tasks with his mom. Because they were so different from one another, Esau and Jacob had trouble getting along. One day, Esau come home from the field very hungry. He saw Jacob boiling some soup and said to his brother, "Will you please share that with me?" Jacob refused to give Esau any soup unless Esau sold his birthright to him. Back in those days, a birthright was very important because it meant the oldest son would inherit his father's land. Esau was older than Jacob, and therefore he was entitled to the land when his dad Isaac died. Esau was so hungry. Right then, he didn't care about his birthright. At that moment, he agreed to sell it to Jacob for a bowl of soup. As the years passed, Isaac, the dad, grew old and blind. When he knew that he was ready to die, he called Esau to his side to give him a final blessing. Before Isaac blessed Esau, he told his son to hunt him a deer and prepare him a meal. Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to Esau. When Esau had gone into the field to hunt, she prepared some meat and set Jacob to be blessed instead. Jacob was reluctant to do this dishonest thing, but at last he agreed and followed his mother's wishes. He brought the meal to his father, and Isaac gave Jacob the final blessing, thinking Jacob was Esau. Ooh. As soon as Isaac had finished the blessing and had sent him away, Esau returned with the meal he had prepared for his father. Then Isaac realized that he had been deceived and was deeply hurt and angered that Jacob could do such a thing. He lied to him. From that day on, Esau hated Jacob and vowed he would kill him for taking away his birthright and his blessing. But the words of Esau was brought to Rebekah, and she sent her son Jacob away to live with her brother Laban until Esau's anger cooled. On the way to his uncle's house, Jacob stopped for a rest for the night. While he was sleeping, he dreamed that there was a ladder set up on the earth. At the top of the ladder reached heaven, and God's angels were climbing up and down. At the very top of the ladder, God stood above them all and said to Jacob, At the top of the ladder, God stood above them all and said to Jacob, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham and Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your descendants, and your descendants shall spread like dust, and to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south." The following morning, Jacob woke up and took the stone which he had used to sleep on and set it up as a pillar. He poured some oil upon the stone to mark it as a spot of a blessed memory. He called the place where God had visited him Bethel, which means the house of God. Jacob continued on his journey until he came to the field where Laban's beautiful daughter was tending to the sheep. Her name was Rachel. Rachel greeted Jacob warmly and brought him to see her father. Jacob worked for Laban for a month, and during the time he grew to love Rachel. When Laban asked him what his wages should be, Jacob replied, I would like to have Rachel in marriage, and agreed to work for 7 years for her hand. At the end of 7 years, Laban prepared a marriage feast. But in place of Rachel, Laban substituted his oldest daughter, Leah, who was not Jacob's favorite. Leah wore a veil so no one could see her face. At the end of the marriage ceremony, Leah was Jacob's wife. Laban had tricked Jacob, just as Jacob had once deceived his brother and his father. Laban explained that it was the custom of the land for the oldest daughter to marry first. He promised Jacob that in the return for serving him another 7 years, he would also receive Rachel as a wife. At the end of 7 years, Rachel became Jacob's wife. But Laban continued to treat Jacob badly and often refused to pay him the wages that he had promised. Finally, Jacob could not bear this treatment anymore, just no longer. He gathered his wives and his children on camel and set out for the land of Canaan, the land of his birth. Before Jacob arrived in Canaan, he sent messengers to tell his brother Esau that he was truly sorry he had cheated him, and he was coming in peace. Jacob's messenger, however, brought back bad news. Esau was coming with 400 men to fight Jacob and his people. That same night, Jacob was bothered by his conscience and went off by himself to think about his past actions. While he was alone, a man came and wrestled with him until the break of day. Then Jacob learned that the man who he had fought with all night was an angel of God, who said to him, "Because you have accepted the challenge to fight and have not given up, you earned God's favor." Let me just repeat that. Because you accepted the challenge to fight and have not given up, you have earned God's favor. Then the angel changed Jacob's name to Israel, a name that means he who struggles with God, or the reliable one. When the angel had left, Jacob looked into the distance and saw Esau coming with his 400 men. As Esau approached, Jacob bowed himself to the ground 7 times. Instead of fighting, Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him and wept because he was so glad to see his brother. Jacob likewise was filled with joy because he had found favor in his brother's eyes. Both men returned to Canaan, their families, and as God has foretold them, Jacob's descendants spread over the face of the earth. You can do wrong and you can do bad. We don't like that to happen, but as long as you're honest and seek forgiveness and you don't give up on God, He's always there for us. Okay, until the next one, the next story is Joseph. See you soon.